Like, this is incredible that in the span of basically 2 years, you have like a superhuman tutor available on every phone on the planet. One or two regulations could have prevented all of that. So we do actually have to be paying attention to what are we not getting by these regulations. And I agree that you need skillful politicians to be able to pull that off. Like, there's no question.
And skillful builders.
And skillful builders to
giving
get,
a good
and,
mission.
yeah, and to not screw it up and not do the Theranos thing or not do the the FTX thing. But unfortunately that will keep happening. And
that will keep happening. That's the thing.
That will keep happening. And so I think maybe to all founders listening, like, just don't
be a Theranos.
and don't get us overly regulated because of your stupid antics.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Founders in Arms podcast with me, Immad and Raj, co-founder and CEO of Mercury.
And I'm Raj Suri, co-founder of Lima and Tribe. And today we have the one and only Aaron Levie, the founder and CEO of Box.
This is great. I feel like I'm on Joe Rogan. Thanks for having me.
I hope you have the next 3 hours, free.
Yeah. What do you think of these Egyptian pyramids anyway?
Where'd they come from?
Maybe that's where they stored all the files back in the day.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, man. It's I don't even know where to start. You have so many interesting opinions that we can dive into, and you're not afraid to share them.
We just talk about foundership right now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's do foundership. I think one thing that'll be interesting is, you got put on this like pretty harsh tweet about like basically people like quiet quitting, being in remote work and not really working.
We have to start with that.
Yeah, let's start with that. So
start with the fun stuff.
Mercury's also remote work.
If this had been recorded just 3 days ago, you wouldn't have that to work with.
I mean, we would have had something else.
Okay, right.
Mercury's also a remote work environment. Are you like super open to remote work at Box?
No. We are not super open to it. We have, pre-pandemic, we had, I'm going to make up a number, maybe about 20% of folks that were remote. And, kind of the typical roles that you'd expect, field sales, folks working with customers in the field, certainly, situations where we had a great engineer maybe move somewhere or where there was just some extremely unique talent we had to get. And pandemic happened. Obviously, we got very flexible, probably at times too flexible, and we're having to kind of reel some of that back in. And now now that things have settled down, we're still primarily hub based, and then we have I don't know, maybe again now 30% of the population might be remote or something like that. So it's certainly an increase pre-pandemic. But we were really trying to bring people back in the office and do that quite a bit more. I've studied lots of the companies that are fully remote or kind of remote leaning. It's fantastic. It's not for me, but I think what's great about capitalism is like everybody gets to try their version of building a company in the way that they want, and that it's just not my sort of style per se. So yeah, that post was unfortunately that it hit me right in the stomach.
But you're not even that remote, so that post was bullshit.
Well, but like I hopefully it's like an anecdote of like one person out there. I'd hope it's not too significant, but it pains me on a couple dimensions. One, primarily just being because there's so many people that are working insanely hard every single day, especially people working insanely hard getting paid less than what was sort of cited in that tweet, and so I just think from a fairness standpoint, it's sort of you hate to see it when there's just so much to get done. People working 10, 12 hours a day, and then there's somebody out there coasting. I don't like it from a principle standpoint.
Yeah.
And I've heard anecdotes, not so much at Box but other companies where there's people in those situations, they actually don't prefer to even be in that situation. They want more to do. And so they're kind of just doing whatever is being asked of them, and it happens to be a low amount. And in those situations, my plea would just be like sign up for more stuff. Like, come talk to me or your manager or somebody, because we have like an insane amount to get done.
So I actually don't think it's a question of not being enough work. Given enough work. So I'm kind of embarrassed to admit it, but the first job I had, I was at Bloomberg, and I basically was a quiet quitter. I worked there for a year, And I just found it so unmotivating. You would get like handed this like spec. You would never talk to any customers. It was like, go implement it. And I was like, okay, I'll do it in 2 months. And it would take me like 2 weeks to do it. And then I would still get like a promotion at the end of the year. So, because all you have to do to get promotions is like sound good in meetings. That's literally was the job. But I mean, I feel like, I think actually that's like the core of it. And that was an in-office thing. So I don't think this is like remote versus in an office. Like you can slack in either situation. I think it's mostly about motivation and culture, and like giving like meaningful work to people. And that is hard to do as the company scales. Like it is hard to like keep that culture and motivation.
Yeah,
and, like,
I agree. So I can't speak to the Bloomberg thing. So, but on the office versus not an office, I do think there's one. There is a little bit of an element though of when you're around people who you see working on interesting stuff, and they're working on a really compelling project, or they came up with an idea to push some boundary forward. That I think there is absolutely a contagious effect of that on just working more, working harder. My maybe counter experience to that would be when we started Box. I was 10 times more motivated because I had co-founders and we lived and worked in a room together. And if I was simply just on my own, just knowing myself, this is again not a categorical point, but knowing myself, if it was just me and all I was accountable was just to myself, there's no way I would have been working 16 hours, and just grinding out the next update, the next feature idea, the next product strategy. But there's a contagious kind of network effect of that. And can you replicate that virtually? 100%. Like clearly, some companies have been able to do that. There's obviously software that helps you do that. Is it a lot easier to create that just in a physical work environment? I think so. So like why work against gravity when you can just get a lot of people into a room and that sort of almost becomes self-propelling. That's kind of the thing I've kind of bet on. And I just see it. You walk around and you see people, collaborating on ideas and like discovering that there's something that they were missing in some meeting, and now that they connected the dots on that, just it was very hard to replicate in a perfectly completely virtual environment. So, but again, this is just like that. There's always been these religious wars well before COVID. I mean, we used to all fight about this on Twitter back in the day. But like I have no opinion about how anybody should run their company. This is just an opinion about how we want to run our company, and I think there's so many different approaches.
Yeah, don't you guys feel though that there is? I used to feel this, when Presto was at a later stage as well, that I had to create some sense of emergency for the company at all times. And like if there wasn't a sense of emergency, people would automatically coast. Yeah, like it's just a natural thing. People have other things to do. They focus on other parts of their life. But there has to be something. There has to be the next deal you got to win. And this deal is like a make or break. We have an arch rival there that we have to beat, right? Like, and
I heard that's true about Stripe culture as well. Like I heard that a lot of like the drive is like there's always like some existential sounding emergency.
Elon does this all the time. Elon's always like he's doing it for the country right now. He's like the country's going to go bankrupt.
I mean, literally, he got like if you can actually like track the ratcheting up of the existential nature of things. It was like. First, it was like, climate change is going to destroy us. Then it was multiplanetary, species. And now it's literally like maybe democracy is at stake. It's like, oh my God. Like the crises only get bigger. So
exactly.
Have you ever tried that at Box, Aaron? Like, is it
only ones that I actually like literally believe are true, and it makes it way more I think sustainable and meaningful to sell. But I think it is actually literally true for all of us. Like we don't you don't almost don't have to like manufacture is probably even the wrong word as much as just like pick a crisis and tell everybody about it. And kind of like home in on the fact that there is one, because actually maybe by default nobody realizes that there isn't always a crisis as a startup, and there's actually a crisis of a company of any scale. Like Sundar has a crisis right now. Like there is no company that is too big.
And the tricky thing though is like at a bigger company, people working on all sorts of things. So like, can you directly contribute to this one crisis is like probably trickier, right? Like it's hard to have like
that's
one
why
big
you make
thing.
it more existential, and then it transcends anybody's individual project. So the bigger the
What is like the most recent thing like that for Box?
well, so I mean now I'm actually like there's a crisis of this Didi post, but so
that's boring.
So for us, there's always been this element of we're a horizontal software company. We sell to enterprises. Unfortunately, we chose one of the basically we believe more important categories of data to manage for an enterprise. And so like if you just add up, okay, you're horizontal, you're going after large enterprises, you're going after a critical data set. Well, like the crisis is that there's always going to be insane competition that is always going to be trying to also get that data set and also be the best place for an enterprise to manage their information. So I, again, maybe made a big mistake in the category choice of like we chose a category that will always have intense competitive dynamics, and we will always have to move faster, innovate better, get more product out, do it in hopefully a more thoughtful and kind of seamless way than the competition. But nothing has ever kind of come easily in this space. I often just like think about how amazing it would be just to do like vertical software. Like, you just like you go and pick apart some category that like, the incumbent is from the 80s and they just haven't woken up to like digital transformation. We didn't do that. So my bad. But like we're
You have other problems when you do vertical software. You
I don't
run
know,
out of
do you?
market size. Yeah.
Yeah,
you
but
run.
like you look at like Viva and like I think somehow
You're cherry picking, Aaron. I mean,
It's like the most successful company.
like the last 4 years, VCs
have
have been like shoveling money to every competitor in vertical SaaS you can like think of. So.
All right, fine. I do have like a survivorship bias problem. So, but wait, is it really hard to be in vertical software?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, it's probably easier to get early traction because you're not competing with the big boys, but also the markets are much smaller, and we faced this at Presto. We ran out of market. You start leading the markets,
you
and
ran
you're
out
like,
of restaurants to sell.
you ran out of customers. Yeah, we ran out of restaurant chains to sell to.
But respectfully, you did choose one of the harder verticals. So when I'm talking verticals, I'm just saying like biopharma, like they got unlimited money. Maybe not now in this administration, but like normally they have unlimited money.
Yeah, that's true.
And they need to automate way more. I mean, your stuff was fragmented. It kind of complicated buying environment.
I mean, the problem is whenever something is easy, a founder will make it hard for themselves. So, like, if it's easy, they'll try to expand and try to get bigger, or like grow the TAM. Like,
exactly.
it's never like you're just gonna sit on it.
Yeah. There's we do kind of invent new problems.
Well, I mean, the markets also want growth, right? You got to grow at a certain rate. So, once you're starting, that's the thing. When you see the market ceiling, you're like, oh, I got to come up with my second act, and like third act, fourth act. And we were doing like 4 or 5 different products at some point, so you have to do that. You have no choice.
Yes, that's totally fair. So, okay, fine. So maybe the grass is not greener, but but yeah. So for us, we've always had this kind of in the back of our heads this incessant need for just more urgency. We have to move faster. We have to outcompete the everybody out there.
Does the new AI stuff kind of like the new technology development also create urgency? Like you need to launch things in this space before like your competitors do it and try to own it? I
think about it a little bit less as we have to be first per se, only because especially in something like AI, there's so much you can learn from actually watching the space a little bit, see what is kind of working, what people are adopting. We did happen to be first, and we are happening to continue to triple down on all things because the learning cycle is so much faster the earlier you get into these things. But weirdly, like I don't think just getting anything out there, no matter what it is a good strategy in this particular kind of market. I think actually having a very thoughtful strategy, one that you directionally have a very sort of strong hypothesis in, That's probably more important than anything. And so that's mostly what we've been focused on. So I want like a few selective, extremely high leverage bets. We don't need to be doing, kind of everything first. We have a couple areas that we've said we're going to lead in AI around how you work with your content and your documents. And we're just going to be hyper focused on that. And then we're going to, get compounding returns from just, the lessons, reinvest back into what's working. But there is, a high degree of urgency simply because you could miss this window and wake up one day and realize you didn't do enough or you didn't make the right decisions. And then quite literally, I do think it's existential.
Yeah. One other thing that I've realized that actually works really well to motivate people, back to your point, Immad, about like, you weren't motivated at Bloomberg. You just give people like a ton of responsibility, way more responsibility than actually makes sense.
I know,
right? Like, yeah, and a mission. So it should feel uncomfortable for people, and the good people will rise to that, and they'll embrace it, and others will shy away from it, and they'll say, no, this is way too much, right? But it's I think I kind of learned this from like early Steve Jobs videos where he would like tell people at Apple, like, this whole thing, this demo rides on you. This like one, the success of this thing rides on you, and it gave people like nightmares, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that there's an element we I think we're all lucky to be on the upswing of kind of economic trends with being in tech. So this I say this with some degree of humility and self-awareness on that. But like, I do think like the mission of what you're trying to do matters, doing something that's exciting. I can't speak to your Bloomberg experience, but like, we all are benefiting from the fact that like, we're working, generally if you're in tech, you're working on interesting problems that if that don't like have to get solved unless you literally as a company do them. And hopefully that they're aligned to kind of important topics. So that kind of gives you that self-propelling, I think, energy in a lot of cases that maybe don't exist in some organizations where it is sort of like, what's one more research report going to do? Whether it takes a month or 2 months, same things are going to happen in the world. So I do think that there's an element of like, as a founder, you do have to kind of, figure out why, if this doesn't get done, what's not going to then, sort of happen the same way in the world? Why is your company, so important? Why does it have to exist? And I think it's important, to try and find that. And, you brought, Stripe as an example, like it's a pretty compelling concept. Like we're going to increase the GDP of the internet. So like big idea, everybody can kind of see how they ladder up to that concept. Elon has perfectly nailed this at every single venture, obviously. So I think it kind of behooves founders to also figure out what are they attached to that's incredibly important. And then one other interesting thing on the urgency thing is, and this is, a lot of people, there's a lot of challenges with being public. There's no question. But one thing that kind of comes included with being public is you kind of automatically get some urgency just due to the fact that every quarter, you're on the, your numbers are going to be on the line. And in a private company, people basically perceive, well, maybe our VCs will get mad or whatnot, but it's sort of like low impact, low visibility to the average, sort of employee.
Most people complain about that, like they say that creates a short-term kind of mindset and things like that. But you think it's actually like it creates urgency?
I think that on the whole, the benefit of that urgency, I think, exceeds the cost of the near-term sort of orientation that it creates. So there's no question that it can have an impact on near-term decisions. I actually think the near-term element of that, though, is more owned by the CEO or executive team and maybe the board of directors, because that's usually about capital allocation decisions. That's like, should we build this project or that project? One will take way longer. One could, be much more important in the short run. I don't think that's like the daily experience of an employee is sort of these long, short trade-offs. And so the benefit though of the public piece is that everybody understands that like, oh shit, like on November 1st, we're reporting earnings. like I better, have closed that deal, or I better have, delivered that feature because that's going to be in the, that's going to be very visible to everybody. So I think on the whole, you sort of get the benefit of that urgency by being public. Now, a lot of other downsides and challenges, but that you have to kind of factor in. But I think the pressure can be pretty helpful.
How distracting is it to have a public company? Like, what percentage of your time are you talking to public investors versus like running the company? It will seem like a larger number. It doesn't feel like as large of a number as it is. But you have, I think probably in total, if I added it all up, maybe let's say 4 days of time a quarter. You have the earnings call, you have the follow-up calls, you have the analyst meetings, and then maybe you have one IR conference and then a couple other investor meetings scattered through. So like about 8%-ish.
8%.
You're forcing him to do math.
I'm doing the
4
rough
divided
math
by
in my
60.
head. 1 week every 12 weeks.
I wouldn't say 1 week though, and I would also
4 days.
And I would also say that you're going to get more than 12 weeks.
Or maybe 5-ish%. Between 5 to 8.
Yeah, eight would be like, whoa, okay, something's gone horribly wrong. So, but
you said it's not as bad as it seems because
it's
like
not because okay, so half the time is very rote. Like you're reading a script, you're saying the prepared lines, all that. So let's say half of the 4 or 5% is kind of like literally an AI could do it. There's no question. You could just train an AI, it'd be done. The other half, you're getting signal. Like you're sort of like, oh, you keep talking about gross margin in this way, or retention metrics in this way, or you heard from this company, they're doing this, and you kind of that just gets put into your overall LLM, and you might recall that for some other future thing. Like we had a fairly non-consequential, probably to this investor meeting like 3.5 years ago, where he just said, hey, you should look at this one company that does this capital allocation thing. And maybe to him, he probably said that line to 50 companies. To me, that was the first time I had heard that, and we went and studied it, and we're like, oh shit, like, okay, this is actually like a pretty good approach. And that sort of set us off on a trajectory for our overall capital allocation strategy. Now, would we have gotten there through other conversations eventually? Yes, but it was a really interesting kind of jumpstart, lit a match on the whole thing. Also, yes. And that's the signal you get by talking to people that study everybody else's metrics all day long, and you don't have to do that. And so you just get to talk to people, and they can point you into interesting directions. So I think you can, if you kind of flip it and you say, okay, what can I get from this that helps the company? Then you can take at least the 2% of that time and turn it into something strategically valuable. I guess just from a pure your job if you just think about the flywheel of if I can ensure investors are better educated on the strategy, then hopefully that means that there'll be more investors, or there'll be more supportive of the stock. If that happens, then there's a higher share price. If that happens, then our equity is worth more for employees. Like that is another part of my job, is to make sure that we have valuable equity, that people are excited to work here, and so on. So technically you are doing directly impactful work for the company. Now, again, could you imagine another world where somebody was just talking to an AI and getting the same answers? Sure. But we're, for social reasons, we're not there yet.
I mean, I dream of the day where fundraising and investor conversations are much easier and more efficient for founders. It seems ridiculous to me, like these very important and, people whose time is very valuable. Yeah. They're spending all the time repeating the same conversation to investors over and over again. Immad, you've been through this, right? Like it's not fun at all. And it feels like maybe an AI could do it, or maybe just do a recording, do a Loom.
I'm surprised that I was going to throw this out to our IR team, but I'm surprised that as far as I can tell, there's not yet been an AI generated earnings call that I know of. And that'd be pure novelty, but it would be trivial. You just give it my script, and with 10 seconds of fine tuning, you'd have my voice, and boom, you have an earnings call. So like that would at least save me 20 minutes. So.
Didn't Toby at Shopify do a thing where he ran an all hands company meeting, and at the end he was like, "Oh, it's actually all AI that wrote this and did all
I
this."
didn't even see that. Oh wow. Okay.
This was a while ago.
Was it on video or was it just pure audio?
I think it was mostly the script was written by AI. I think he was still saying the script. It would have been even more fun if
I
he.
see. Okay. But you could probably. I bet you could pull off video.
Yeah, you can do that.
80%.
I mean, that's been extremely convincing.
Yeah.
Like this kind of Zoom call, like we could easily all be AIs right now. It would be extremely convincing.
No. I mean, there's
Say 45 minutes.
It's not obvious that you guys are actually there right now. So.
That's right.
What's your take, Aaron, on kind of this AI super cycle? Do you think it's like a real super cycle? Do you think it's kind of over its skis hype? Like, where are you on the overhyped versus correctly hyped kind of?
I don't have any non-consensus views on this. I think it's one of these. We'll look back and there'll be some crazy projects and like, wow, I can't believe that company got $500 million to train that model. And then we'll be like, oh, we totally missed this, like, supply chain automation thing that became $20 billion. So I suspect that, you could probably just be safe by doing an index of AI investing, wake up in 10 years and that asset class is just worth more, because it would be, impossible to conceive that we have, significant actual artificial intelligence that actually can do real work, and we don't find incredible applications for it. On our end, just the ability to give something a document, and I'm sure you see this a bit, actually in both your guys' worlds, but you give something a document and you extract the entities from that and the structured metadata. And now all of a sudden we can automate a workflow that previously was manual, right? Like that alone, if I
and that stuff is here, right? It's not like we need another AI for it.
We don't need another model. I wouldn't want it to slow down because we could just make it way cheaper. But like for the vast majority of documents, we can already solve that problem today. AI could stop right now and you'd probably solve, like 100 billion hours a year of work. And if we just did that, but the good news is not slowing down. And so it'd only get better. But like, this is like, that's like non-speculative. It's very, very boring. Like everybody has to do that exact task and it can automate, a significant degree of these back office kind of workflows. And it's like here today. So that's obviously pretty exciting. That we, this has been a problem since we started the company, that everybody has come to us, every day since founding the company. Can I give you content? Can you pull out the data from it? Can I put that into a database? And we're like, sure, for the low price of like $1 million consulting experience, we can totally do that. And now you can just do it, and AI can just do it. So I think this is this will only get bigger. It's tough to look at some of these categories where you do have like the 17th coding assistant product, like. Some of those things are just not going to survive. But I think we've always seen that in any new category. You're always going to see a race where 10 different companies try the same idea. We'll see which one works better. The whole category will probably, on a net basis, perform well. Some people will lose. Some people will win, way more.
You've been quite vocal about Web3, and you didn't believe that would be a thing, right, a few years ago. And now it's like crypto is seeing a resurgence. I was wondering what you think of that.
So I want to be very precise. Bitcoin, I basically was always indifferent to. I made some Bitcoin jokes. I traded in and out of Bitcoin over the years. But like Bitcoin is like, listen, if everybody wants to believe in digital gold, that's actually just like totally, there's nothing that doesn't make sense about that, at least. Like gold is, some people will argue, it's got some material, use cases, but like for the most part, it's just something we've all bought into as like this shared thing that we all agree on the value on. So if there's one digital version of that, totally makes sense. And so in this way, I'm actually like probably closely aligned to Bitcoin maxis. I would probably be like a toxic Bitcoin maxi, like in another life. And so I actually can understand that philosophy, which is like, guys, we just need one shared store of value we all agree on, and like we're all going to be bought into. Where I got lost was when we started talking about crypto as like a data store for non-financial objects. And that was just basically where I was like, whoa. And partly was I just wanted to fully understand it myself of how this would play out. The other part was I didn't want to get to a point where people would be like, hey, should you store your files on the blockchain? And like me not understand, like, is that a good idea or a bad idea? Like, I better like really think this through. And as I thought it through and you know, talked to, you know, lots of friends on, it like became very obvious that there's like the vast majority of these ideas were just bad ideas. Like, you don't need to bootstrap a network effect through financial, you know, incentives, because you're going to have a lot of people join that network for the financial incentive, not for the utility. That will, you know, automatically kind of, you know, make the utility of the underlying service be kind of artificially propped up, that could go away at any moment, the moment that there's no kind of financial upside. And so that was my concern, was there was all these ideas like everything's going to become this sort of Web3 financialized network for non-inherent financial use cases. Like, you don't need there to be a trading environment for just like storing, you know, data in a trustless way. Like, that's just not, like, we don't need that. Like, we already have, you know,
I mean, maybe for data where you're worried about censorship, but
yeah,
that's
but like, I don't know why that
thing.
needs to be. I don't know why that needs to become a token though. Like we could just all agree that like let's just have a trustless. You know, you could even be a blockchain.
Which is what Tor is.
Yeah. So like I don't know why that asset needs to go up and down based on people tweeting. You know, a token. So so that was my issue, is like the more I studied that, like, wow, like the crypto day trader types that are like, oh, we're all going to swarm this social network and like all buy the tokens and then they're going to, you know, shoot up. It's like, no, like, you've just automatically now ruined the chance of that social network from being viable, because you know, you obviously are there for the wrong reasons. And I saw this in the 90s and the early 2000s. There were lots of these things like, there used to be these apps where you'd download software that would show you banner ads while you browse the internet and gave you like free internet access. You know, all these like incentive schemes that were financial to like get you to do things. And then, you know, what happened 3 months later? People built bots that would just.
Isn't there like a principle or paradox or something about like how incentives are like not how you get people to do things? Like, totally. I think there's like so much danger in it. That was always the weird thing about crypto. Like, people like, we'll incentivize this behavior with money. And I was like, that's the worst way to incentivize behavior.
Well, no, 100%. And like, there were like early theories of like, well, imagine if Airbnb had a token. And it's like, guys, like, Airbnb worked. Like, it didn't need it. Like it's like $100 billion company. Like, it didn't, like, you just proved that, like, no, actually, like, you can just have a marketplace. Like, I have a thing, somebody wants that thing, there's a middleman, they you know, enable the transaction. Like, they didn't need another sort of orthogonal financial incentive a la a token to get involved. Anyway, so I that's a very long meandering way of saying, like, the Web3 of Web3, I didn't buy into.
Aaron, I guess this relates to this. Like,
Bitcoin, everybody should do whatever they want with Bitcoin. Is my official statement. So,
okay. You know, obviously, you could just be quiet about this and form an opinion. Like, why tweet/X these things? Like, what's, you know, do you just like talk about it publicly because it's fun for you, or is there like a strategy behind why
you wanted to piss off the Andreessen guys?
I mean, this is more of a question for like a psychoanalyst. I don't like, probably some.
Well, I'm sure you've thought about it every single time you open your Twitter app, and it's like, why am I doing this?
I do think that, but I think you know, probably it's, you know, it's sort of some spectrum-y kind of behavior, probably. So
it's not a grand strategy.
Yeah, there's no grand strategy. I have to like I used to just like complain to like like family members about like, why are people doing this? And then it was like my family members like just like don't want to hear about it anymore. So I had to find like another outlet to complain to.
I love Aaron's tweets. Immad, you're too neutral on Twitter. You got to be more spicy. You got to come up with, you know.
I mean, honestly, I'm just a fairly neutral person. Like, I'm like, I get this side, I get that side. Like, you know, and like nuance doesn't work on social media. If I'm hey, here's like the two sides, and I kind of get them, but they're both wrong in these ways. Like, no one cares about that.
No, I believe any side that I'm not on is completely wrong. So, yeah.
I mean, it's also, you know, I did Twitter/LinkedIn in a much more deliberate way. In 2016, I was like, I'm going to start Mercury, and I want to go reach as many founders as possible because they'll be the audience, and it worked. I would say that was actually a successful strategy, but it doesn't come naturally to me to be like loud and annoying on the internet.
To be very, did you say annoying?
He wasn't annoying. He wasn't.
I meant it in a nice way.
I mean, to be clear, I don't like recommend this as like a comm strategy. This is just like I have to have an outlet. If it wasn't X, it would be something else. So,
no, I get it. And I love your tweets on politics. I actually think you're like the prototypical Silicon Valley CEO, right? It kind of leans, you know, you want social progress, but you want business-friendly government, right? So that's why I kind of look to you as like a North Star, you know, your tweets on this. And well, I mean,
you think
more
Aaron
than
is like the political North Star?
I think so.
As proven by this election, I'm literally not the North Star. So,
well, but for Silicon Valley CEOs, I think most Silicon Valley CEOs probably thought the way you thought. This is kind of the way I think, but don't express it. You know, like in private meetings, the people would talk like you, but like you're the only one saying it publicly, right? So, I mean,
what did Aaron say about this election?
You didn't follow his tweets?
I said Jill Stein's going to win. Yeah, I mean, this election was wild. Trump just sort of brings out something from me of just like, oh my, and then like, and unfortunately, it literally is just like it's fully TDS. Like it's like I understand that it's caused by something that's been, you know, kind of just manufactured in my head of just like to, you know, reflexively respond to anything that's happening. But I did make a decision that post this election, I would not do the kind of 2016 version of that.
Resistance.
And yeah, exactly. Just because it's like life's too short. I don't have the time for it. And also there's just a lot that we have to get done as a country. So I was like, okay, during the election season, I'll share my thoughts on you know what I think should happen. Post election, like it's just time to bring things together. Let's move forward. And so that's kind of been my MO. And I will admit that there's totally things that I will not. I mean, like this is not like a profound, you know, admission, but the Democrats suck right now on like so many different topics. So it's very tough. Trying to like justify and support a number of these things. So I mean, the social stuff pulls me back just because I'm obviously, you know, kind of not obviously, but like I'm more socially aligned to Democrats. But it's just tough how much they really want to shoot themselves in the foot on these far left kind of topics, and it's painful because they're just not tracking to, you know, probably where most of the country is.
They're just not super business savvy, right? It's just it feels like, you know, like Kamala, great person, but, you know, seemed like a nice lady, but she had never worked in the private sector. You could tell, like, she just not confident talking about the economy.
I think that's a part of it, but they're also like such gaslighters. Like I was just thinking about earlier. Remember the Inflation Reduction Act, which like 100% of people were like, this is going to cause inflation, and then it caused inflation, and it was literally called Inflation Reduction Act. Like I think everyone's kind of forgotten about it, but like those types of things just make you think like, wow, what can I even believe these people say?
To be fair, I think both sides will gaslight you. So I don't think that is nobody has a monopoly on gaslighting. You know, one does it in a more expensive fashion. So I agree that like the ticket price of the gaslighting on the Democrat side is higher. I would say that I think the business savviness is definitely, you know, that's probably one of my top issues. But you know, we do have other issues in the Democrat Party, like they, you know, they don't know how to think about let's say the Israel Gaza conflict dynamics. They don't know how to handle homelessness and crime in a lot of kind of urban areas. We've just sort of seen this play out. So I think there's a bunch of these topics that lost kind of like one faction at a time, and I could see it in certain friend groups where you're just like, oh, like you're super pro science, you're super pro biotech, or you're super pro, advanced innovation. Like these are like things that I would normally think of 10 years ago as like, obviously like that's a shoo-in for Democrat. And then boom, this one topic is just like, I think the party's just completely gone bonkers. And now I'm leaning right, or I'm voting for Trump. And that happened enough times in the past, kind of year or two, that at first it was like very obvious Biden was just going to definitely lose. Like the fact that was happening. I thought Kamala had a chance because new energy in the party, a chance to maybe move more to the center, different advisors. But
you just didn't have enough time. Like I think if they had put it in a year earlier, there was at least a chance.
I think it would have been tough.
Like
the inflation was so tough for the last few years. I think a lot of voters were just not happy.
I think you do have to, the tricky thing on the Kamala campaign is that, it is sort of, hard for the public to fully understand what does she fundamentally believe on some of these key topics. And I had a lot of faith that things had moved more to the center due to the kind of advisors that she was building, policy folks. But unless you kind of get out there and either disavow certain things or really clearly articulate your updated beliefs, it's just going to be challenging for people to kind of believe certain stuff. And then on the Trump side, you have this dynamic where Elon is a powerful force. He brings some degree of like a proxy for tech oriented stuff. You do have some of the economic indicators that we've been dealing with. You have a totally different, campaign on just the podcast thing. I think the podcast thing is a fundamentally symbolic difference of the campaigns. Is like one's just gonna get out there and talk to you, and the other's going to have kind of campaign slogans that kind of get out in various ways. That's like totally different campaign strategies. And so I don't know. It's not 100% obvious. More time.
I feel that the podcast stuff was a huge difference. Raj doesn't think the podcast thing made a difference. Like your take on it is that it is like the future.
Symbolically, I think he's right.
I think it's the symbolism of the podcast.
I don't think it's just symbolism. I think it's very hard for someone to talk for 3 hours and not communicate what they really think. Whereas when you do these kind of scripted political things, you can just be like, I have no idea what politicians are super annoying about this. Like you talk to them and you have literally no idea at the end what they really believe, because like they answered a bunch of scripted responses.
They dodge a lot. Yeah.
No. So okay. Sorry. I don't want to overweight the symbolic point. I think there is a difference when, obviously my X feed is heavily influenced by a few factors, but like my X feed was basically like these 2-minute or 5-minute clips of either JD or Trump on some podcast saying something. Sometimes people were making fun of them, but sometimes they were just like profound points, and everybody was talking about that. And you just like every day there'd be new versions of that just flowing through. On the Harris campaign, it was kind of just like basically just little, like it would be a flub of Trump saying something, and that just like runs out of potency. Like it's just like, we totally get that he's gonna say these things. Like it's like hard to get energized every day about that. And there wasn't the reverse. So you didn't have the positive. You didn't have like nobody was sharing positives of the Harris campaign or Tim Walz saying this one really powerful, answer to a question that was like, that's really clever. And so you just had a complete delta in sort of like it's funny because everybody thought this was going to be a vibes election on the Kamala side initially because of these TikTok things. But it was equally a vibes election on the other side, which is just like, man, like Trump will just say these crazy things and he'll work at McDonald's and he says this thing on Aiden Ross or Theo Vaughn or Lex Friedman, and it's just like you're just inundated with content, and so you can't compete with that if you're just doing slogans. So
what's your in the spirit of kind of moving forward? What's your take on kind of DOGE?
Yeah.
Like, do you think it's gonna work, or do you think it's like unlikely to like really move the needle much?
I'm probably more on the bullish side. I mean, bullish in if you agree with the charter of DOGE, it's more likely to work more than people who don't think it will work believe.
Like, what do you think will work? Like, it'll save money or deregulate, or both?
I think both. I think that partly it's just like at some point, like if it's Elon's 10th thing that nobody thinks is going to happen, and like how many times do you have to get proven wrong, like as a society, like no, there's no way that we're going to have EVs that go more than 60 miles. Okay, you're proven wrong. No, there's no way that we could like ever have reusable rockets. Okay, no, you're proven wrong. Okay, no, there's no way that like somebody who is paralyzed is going to be able to like operate something with their brain. Okay, you're proven wrong. So at some point it's like, why do people keep wanting to be proven wrong? Like he's committed. It's like this is his sole sort of like channeling of energy right now. So one, you've just got extremely high motivation. Vivek is probably another factor there. And then two, the charter doesn't seem to be totally kind of outside the bounds of what you could do in an administration. Like, could you totally whack each agency and just say, you just have to get rid of this, like all of these taxing regulations, and we're gonna reduce, and we're gonna go at you legally or whatever? Like, seems plausible. And could you totally just be like, no, we're not going to like spend that $10 million on this random project that is like not going to produce something? Of course, you could probably do that, because you could put a massive spotlight on it. You could make it uncomfortable, to kind of pursue that thing. Now, I think that they're going to be met with a lot of friction. Some of that friction will be good, because you could accidentally kind of overdo it, and some of it will just be natural, and I think the system will work through it. But I do think on the positive side, like government size is like not one of my big things. So I don't really, I have no strong opinion one way or another on like government needs to be smaller. I'm not like one of those people, so don't care. The thing that is a problem is the overburdensome kind of completely suffocating regulation. And this is another very subtle factor.
Do you feel that at Box, or like you just see it?
We don't, but all of our customers do. And we like, maybe the counter to my earlier griping about vertical SaaS is that like I feel very fortunate to be in a space that doesn't deal with just these crazy, maze of complex regulations. We do serve, regulated industries, so we have to deal with a lot of compliance and data privacy stuff, but that's manageable. The kind of regulation that is totally in the way of our success as a country is like, building out energy sources, building out, manufacturing plants, building out new forms of transportation, autonomous vehicles, space, all the space, regulation. So I do think that there's a lot of leverage if you kind of go through and say, hey, there's like 10 strategic areas of innovation in America for the next century. Let's make sure that we don't have, major areas of friction in these spaces. Let's actually let's accelerate in all these categories. That would be high upside. I totally think Elon / Vivek, they could pull that off if they channel their energy into that, and that would be extremely high upside.
I'm much more bullish on that than like trying to cut staff to save some money.
No,
there's not that much money to be saved. But
I totally agree. I think the forest from the trees would be if you could do high leverage regulation reduction and sort of acceleration of projects. Like somebody wants a nuclear reactor, for a data center, like we have a way of like getting that done. Somebody wants to build out a new chip, manufacturing plant, like we have a way of like passing through all the EPA stuff like rapidly. Like we should just be building more. We should be, starting more companies. We should get rid of any, again, back to unfortunately the negative on the Democrats, like just even the unrealized capital gains thing, even that in the ether is just like, oh my God, like what does this mean for, are you guys actually like pro, the tech economy if you're even talking about this stuff? So like get rid of all areas of friction, let people build, obviously with the right, levels of protection for kind of very, very, dangerous or risky stuff. But like, we do have to get out of our own way on these topics.
Yeah. Let me just say one thing that maybe a contrarian view on that, which is like, I think that makes sense in theory, but the way the American electorate works is that the moment that there's a problem with these things, like a regulation is cut and then there's a problem, in nuclear, you point out nuclear, right? The American electorate itself is risk averse, and they will not tolerate too much deregulation themselves unless it's sold to them as like this is short-term pain for long-term gain, and they understand that. Elon has tried saying that, but he's not necessarily the best messenger for this, right? So you need a very skilled politician to sell that constantly to the American people, why this is good in the long term, right? Because otherwise, the moment there's a financial crisis, remember the financial crisis of 2008? That's why we have so many financial regulations today, because American public is like, I don't want this, I don't want this type of thing to happen.
Yeah, so I think it behooves us on the building side of those regulations to still be incredibly thoughtful and kind of safety oriented and build strong, highly governed companies and organizations. And so like the proof point is you go to San Francisco and Waymos are everywhere, and basically like probably the NPS of a Waymo user is like 90. And like it's just like very clearly like all net positive. Like this could be society in the future.
But look at Cruise. I mean, like you have one problem and the company gets shut down. Like it's
but it got shut down because of the regulator. With the right regulator, they would not have said Cruise is now the devil. Like let's put this in context of all crashes that happen, and this is actually still.
I think that's like the key point that often people don't look at the counterfactual. It's like, Vivek had a really good podcast he did where he was like, imagine all the lives that did not get saved because the FDA did not approve things for an extra 10 years. Yes. Right? There's like millions of people who were affected by that.
Yeah, and this is my issue with a lot of the AI regulation. Obviously it's impossible to know what SB 1047 would have done. So like we can't know, but right now we should not be at the stage of creating friction in AI advancement. Specifically to that point, you could never argue that like people shouldn't have like an AI powered Khan Academy or tutor. Like every person on the planet should be able to like go to Gemini or ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever and just like ask a math question or a science question and get an answer back. Like this is incredible that in the span of basically 2 years, you have like a superhuman tutor available on every phone on the planet. There's like that didn't have to happen. Like one or two regulations could have prevented all of that. Yeah. So we do actually have to be paying attention to what are we not getting by these regulations. And I agree that you need skillful politicians to be able to pull it off. Like there's no question. But
and skillful builders, I guess.
What's that?
And skillful builders.
And skillful builders to get and to not screw it up and not do the Theranos thing or not do the the FTX thing. But unfortunately that will keep happening. And
that will keep happening. That's the thing.
That will keep happening. And so I think maybe to all founders listening, like just don't
be a Theranos.
Just do it for everyone.
And don't get us overly regulated because of your stupid antics. So
exactly. Yeah.
All right, maybe that's a great point to stop. I feel like we could keep talking for a long time.
Should have been a Joe Rogan type of podcast.
Really good having you.
All right, guys. Good to see you.
Thanks everyone for listening. It was great to have you, Aaron. And catch us next time on Founders in Arms podcast, and listen to us where you get your podcasts.